Welcome to History Crossroads, where past meets present, and every story reveals a new path through time.
Welcome back to History Crossroads. I'm your host, Adam. Picture this: a courtroom in Dublin, 1848. The air is thick with tension. Gas lamps flicker, casting dancing shadows on faces that already know the verdict. In the dock stands a young man, barely 25, gripping the oak railing until his knuckles turn white. His green eyes burn with intensity that makes court officials shift uncomfortably. When Thomas Francis Meagher speaks, his voice rises like rolling thunder. I am here to state the truth, and nothing but the truth, and if the result is death, so be it. That defiant declaration would echo across 2 continents. This is the story of Thomas Francis Meagher, revolutionary, exile, Union general, territorial governor, and ultimately a man who vanished into thin air. Before we journey from Ireland's Emerald Hills to Montana's wild rivers, make sure you're following History Crossroads wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube for visual content. Thomas Francis Meagher was born in Waterford, Ireland on August 3, 1823, into a world of contradictions. From his bedroom window in the family's Georgian townhouse, he watched ships arrive daily, English vessels heavy with manufactured goods, American clippers carrying grain and cotton, mysterious foreign traders flying exotic flags. The River Swere sparkled in morning light, while dock workers called to each other in lilting Irish accents. His father, also named Thomas, was a self-made man whose calloused hands still bore the marks of years handling cargo before becoming one of Waterford's wealthiest merchants and eventually mayor. But Ireland was bleeding. The Great Famine was tearing the countryside apart like a slow-moving apocalypse. Just beyond the comfort of the Meagher house, Thomas witnessed scenes that would haunt him forever. Barefoot children with hollow cheeks begging for crusts of bread, funeral processions carrying famine victims through muddy lanes, British soldiers marching through Irish streets with bayonets gleaming, the embodiment of foreign occupation. At 13, he was packed off to Stonyhurst College in Lancashire, England, a Jesuit fortress of grey stone rising from the countryside where Latin echoed through corridors lined with portraits of long-dead scholars. The discipline was crushing, the academic standards merciless. Boys who couldn't conjugate Latin verbs properly found themselves on bread and water for dinner. His classmates, sons of English Catholic gentlemen, never let him forget he was different. Here comes the little Irishman, they whispered when he passed in the halls. Paddy's trying to sound English again. The words cut deeper than any physical blow, but Thomas channeled that pain into excellence. He devoured Cicero's orations until he could recite them in his sleep, studied Napoleon's campaigns like battle plans for his own future. By graduation, he had won every speaking prize and developed an oratorical style that married Irish fire with classical precision. Returning to Ireland in the early 1840s, he threw himself into the Young Ireland movement with the fervor of a religious convert. Poets, journalists, and dreamers who gathered in smoke-filled rooms above Dublin taverns, their voices growing louder with each pint of ale, planning revolution with notebooks and quill pens. When Thomas spoke at these clandestine meetings, conversation died. His voice had a magnetic quality that made grown men weep and women clutch their hearts. He could paint pictures of a free Ireland so vivid, so passionate, that listeners swore they could see green flags already flying over Dublin Castle. Imagine a Dublin street corner in 1847, the stench of famine lingering in the air. From courthouse steps, Meagher's voice pours over the crowd like music, painting visions of Ireland rising from despair. Men shout approval, women weep openly, and British authorities take careful notes. It was at one meeting that he earned his nickname, Meagher of the Sword. During a heated debate about peaceful protest versus armed resistance, Thomas rose, "The alternative to the sword is shame. And shame, gentlemen, is not an option for Ireland." 1848 brought revolution across Europe, and Irish rebels believed their moment had come. But the Great Irish Rebellion became mockingly known as the Cabbage Patch Revolt. It happened in Ballingarry. 46 policemen, barricaded in a farmhouse, facing peasants with pitchforks and ancient muskets. The battle lasted 2 hours. By evening, the revolution was over. Meagher was arrested and faced death, but in that Dublin courtroom, he didn't plead for mercy. Instead, he delivered one of history's most famous speeches. "My lord, this is our first offense, but not our last. If you will be easy with us this once, we promise to try to do better next time. And next time, we won't be fools enough to be caught." The crowd erupted. The death sentence was commuted to transportation for life to Van Diemen's Land, Tasmania, Britain's prison at the world's edge. Tasmania was beautiful, in a way that seemed almost cruel to prisoners. Rolling green hills that could have been transplanted from Ireland. Pristine rivers running crystal clear. Forests so dense they swallowed sound itself. But beauty became torture when you were forbidden to leave, surrounded by thousands of miles of empty ocean. Meagher received what was called a ticket of leave, freedom with invisible chains. He could live in a cottage, work, even marry, but he could never leave the island. Invisible guards watched constantly. Every letter was deemed open and read, every conversation reported to authorities. He settled in a modest cottage with whitewashed walls and a vegetable garden he tended with his own hands. It overlooked a valley where morning mist rose from a babbling stream. For the first time in his adult life, he experienced something approaching peace. Here he met Catherine Bennett, daughter of a local settler, 22 years old with auburn hair that caught fire in sunlight and eyes the color of Tasmanian jade. More importantly, she possessed a spirit that matched his own. While other colonists whispered about the dangerous Irish rebel, Catherine saw a man reading poetry by candlelight, tending his garden with gentle hands. Their courtship unfolded under watchful official eyes, meetings at church socials, chaperoned walks along the river, love letters that were read by government censors before reaching their intended recipient. They married in February 1851, creating a life that looked normal from the outside. Morning coffee on the porch, evening walks through their garden, quiet conversations by the fireplace. But the fire never died. In evenings, he spread maps and nautical charts, like battle plans, corresponding in code with Irish exiles in America, using invisible ink. The breakthrough came through fellow exile Patrick O'Donoghue. Irish Americans had raised money for a rescue mission. April 29, 1852. On a moonless night, Meagher left his cottage for what he told Catherine was an evening walk. At a predetermined beach, he met other exiles and waited until a small dinghy appeared against the black water. As they rowed toward the whaling ship, Elizabeth Thompson, Thomas looked back once at the island where Catherine lay sleeping, probably wondering where her husband had gone. The voyage to New York took 3 months under assumed names. On May 27, 1852, Meagher stepped onto American soil to find thousands of Irish Americans crowding the docks, waving green flags, and singing rebel songs. These were people who had left Ireland with nothing but memories. And now, one of their heroes had escaped from the ends of the earth. Meagher established himself in New York as a lawyer and lecturer, his talks on Irish history packing concert halls. When Fort Sumter was bombarded in April 1861, he saw destiny calling again. At a massive rally, he addressed thousands of Irish immigrants. The Union that gave us shelter is in danger. We who have known oppression cannot stand by and watch freedom die. Within weeks, he organized the 69th New York Infantry, part of the famous Irish Brigade. They were men with hands hardened by labor and hearts hardened by loss. Many had fled the Great Famine or escaped British prisons. Their green silk colors bore golden harps and shamrocks. Their motto, "Who never retreated from the clash of spears." September 17, 1862, Antietam, Maryland. The Irish Brigade faced a sunken road called Bloody Lane, open field, no cover, Confederate defenders with clear lines of fire. Military textbooks would call it suicide. Meagher rode before his men. Today we fight for every oppressed people on earth. Forward, and let them know that Irishmen know how to die. They advanced 400 yards under withering fire, never breaking, never retreating. By the time they took the position, nearly half were casualties. Over 600 Irish immigrants lay dead or wounded. 2 months later at Fredericksburg, the nightmare repeated. The Irish Brigade, now barely 300 strong, advanced toward Mary's Heights, pinning boxwood to their caps for Ireland. Confederates later said it was the most beautiful and terrible sight of the war. Green flags emerging from smoke, Irish voices raised in song, while bullets tore through their ranks. By war's end, the Irish Brigade had been shot to pieces and rebuilt 3 times. Their battle flags were so riddled with holes they looked like green lace, but their reputation was immortal, their courage praised even by Robert E. Lee. Peace brought new challenges. The nation was exhausted, with little use for aging Irish generals. Then, President Andrew Johnson offered Meagher the position of acting territorial governor of Montana, a form of prestigious exile to a land where gold drew dreamers and criminals equally. Meagher arrived in Virginia City in 1865 to find a world of mud streets and canvas buildings. The town never slept. Gold mines thundered like mechanical heartbeats. Saloons poured whiskey. Violence was commonplace. But Montana's problems ran deeper than frontier lawlessness. The territory was split between Union and Confederate sympathizers, Catholics and Protestants, with many viewing the Irish Catholic governor with suspicion. His first public address took place in a hall smelling of pine sap and tobacco. Men in muddy boots packed the room, skeptical faces reflecting their doubt. "We stand at the edge of wilderness, but also at the beginning of civilization," he declared. But the crowd was unmoved. These practical men wanted results, not speeches. The problems were overwhelming. No adequate buildings, no reliable communication, no effective law enforcement. Meagher found himself governing a territory larger than many nations with a budget smaller than some businesses' office supplies. His letters to Washington grew desperate. "I am like a man trying to govern the wind." The isolation weighed heavily. He began drinking more purposefully, not social drinking, but the steady drinking of a man trying to quiet inner voices. Local newspapers printed rumors about the governor's habits. By early 1867, he was a man under siege, surrounded by political enemies, questioned by federal authorities, mocked by local papers. July 1st, 1867. The steamboat G.A. Thompson churned upstream on the muddy Missouri River toward Fort Benton. On deck, Thomas Francis Meagher appeared pale and distracted, his attention constantly drawn to the rushing brown water carrying debris like toothpicks. That evening, witnesses saw him at the ship's bar, drinking whiskey in varying amounts according to different accounts. His mood was melancholy, reflective, like a man reviewing his life and finding it disappointing. He spoke of Ireland's green hills, Catherine abandoned in Tasmania, his Civil War soldiers who died following his orders. Around 10 p.m., he walked onto the deck. The night was warm, stars reflecting on the water like scattered diamonds. What happened next depends on who tells the story, but the facts are undisputed. Meagher approached the starboard railing and stood looking over the water. Around 10:30 p.m., passengers heard a cry and a splash. "Man overboard!" Crew members rushed with lanterns, throwing ropes into the darkness. They found his hat floating downstream, a felt hat bobbing like a dark bird. But of Thomas Francis Meagher himself, no trace. The Missouri had swallowed him completely. The search continued for days. Military personnel patrolled riverbanks. Settlers dragged shallows with hooks. But the Missouri kept its secret. Within hours, rumors began. Accident, suicide, murder. The absence of a body fueled every theory. Some pointed to his drinking, others to his recent melancholy, still others to his powerful enemies in territorial politics. Without witnesses to the crucial moment, the truth remained as elusive as morning mist. And so ends Thomas Francis Meagher's story, not with clash of swords, but with silence and a muddy river's eternal flow. It's an ending that fits the man, dramatic, mysterious, leaving more questions than answers. In death, as in life, Meagher became larger than facts could contain. In Ireland, he's remembered as a martyr to independence. His speech is still quoted. In America, the Irish Brigade's legacy lives on in military tradition. Their shot-riddled battle flags rest in museums where children learn about courage and sacrifice. In Montana, a bronze statue of Meagher stands on the Capitol grounds in Helena, gazing westward toward horizons he never reached. A reminder that some stories don't end, they just stop, leaving us to wonder what might have been. Was it accident, suicide, or murder? We'll never know, but perhaps that mystery is his final gift, the reminder that some questions matter more than answers, that some lives burn too brightly to simply fade away. From Waterford's docks to Antietam's trenches, from Tasmania's shores to the Missouri's waters, Thomas Francis Meagher lived a life spanning continents and decades, leaving ripples that still reach us today. He was a man who refused limitations, who broke free from every prison until the river claimed him at last. That's our story for today on History Crossroads. I'm Adam, and if this tale of rebellion, escape, and mystery struck a chord, make sure to follow History Crossroads wherever you listen to podcasts, because history isn't just dates and facts and textbooks. It's about real people who lived, loved, fought, and dreamed. People like Thomas Francis Meagher, whose story reminds us that sometimes the most powerful legacy is the mystery we leave behind. Until next time, keep exploring those crossroads where history takes its most interesting turns.